Christmas Eve, 1945. Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sodder family is asleep in their two-story wooden home. At 1:30 a.m., a fire breaks out. George and Jenny Sodder escape with 4 of their children, but 5 are still trapped upstairs. The staircase is engulfed in flames. George runs outside to use his ladder, but it's missing. He tries to start his coal trucks to climb onto the roof, but the engines are completely dead. The house burns to the ground in 45 minutes, but when the ashes cool, there are no bodies, no bones, nothing. 5 children completely vanished into the winter night. This is the impossible mystery of the Sodder children. To understand how 5 children can evaporate from a burning building, we need to go back a few months. George Sodder was a successful businessman, an Italian immigrant who built his own coal trucking company. He was outspoken, holding strong political views that often angered some members of the local Italian community. In the fall of 1945, the strange occurrences began. A life insurance salesman came to the house. When George declined his offer, the man pointed directly at George and said, "Your house is going up in smoke, and your children are going to be destroyed. You will be paid for the dirty remarks you have been making." George brushed it off as an angry sales pitch. A few weeks later, a stranger appeared at the back of the house, staring up at the electrical fuse boxes. He muttered that the wiring would cause a fire someday. George thought this was bizarre because he had just had the house completely rewired and the electric company had cleared it as perfectly safe. Someone was watching the Sodders, and they were planning something. The night of December 24th, the children opened a few presents, stayed up late, and finally went to sleep. At 12:30 a.m., the phone rang. Jenny answered it. It was a woman with a strange, unnatural laugh, asking for a name Jenny didn't recognize. In the background, Jenny heard the clinking of glasses and loud music. She hung up, thinking it was just a wrong number, but as she walked back to bed, she noticed the front door was unlocked and the curtains were open. At 1 a.m., Jenny heard a loud thump on the roof, followed by a rolling sound, like something heavy hitting the shingles. She waited, silence. She fell back asleep. Half an hour later, the house was filled with smoke. George and Jenny grabbed their youngest child and yelled for the others. 4 children made it out, but Morris, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty were nowhere to be seen. George sprinted to the phone to call the fire department. The phone line was completely dead. He ran to his neighbor's house to call. No operator answered. It wasn't until 8 a.m., 7 hours after the fire started, that the fire department finally arrived. But by then, there was nothing left to save. The fire chief told the Sodders that the blaze was so hot, it simply cremated the children. But experts disagreed. A wooden house fire, even one that lasts 45 minutes, cannot reach the temperatures needed to vaporize human bone. George and Jenny began their own investigation. They found a ladder that had been missing from its usual spot. It was hidden at the bottom of an embankment 75 feet away. They found that the telephone wires hadn't been burned through. They had been neatly cut by a professional. Then there were the sightings. A woman at a roadside hotel claimed she saw the 5 children with 2 men and 2 women in an Italian car the morning after the fire. Another witness said he saw them being watched from a car while the house was burning. The FBI refused to help, claiming it was a local matter. But for George and Jenny, this was no longer a tragedy. It was a kidnapping. In 1952, George erected a massive billboard on Route 16. It featured the faces of all 5 children and a $5,000 reward. He wanted every person driving through West Virginia to know their names. For 20 years, the Sodders followed every lead. They traveled across the country, interviewed hundreds of people, and spent every penny they had. People told them to give up. The state of West Virginia had officially declared the children dead, but Jenny Sodder never stopped wearing black. She spent the rest of her life planting flowers at the site of the fire. Flowers that she said would only grow if the ground was empty of her children's remains. And then, in 1967, a letter arrived that changed everything. The envelope had no return address. It was postmarked from Kentucky. Inside was a photograph of a young man in his 20s. He had the same dark eyes, the same nose, and the same curly hair as Louis Sodder, the 9-year-old who disappeared that night. On the back of the photo, a cryptic message was handwritten. Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie. He little boys, a 90132. The Sodders hired a private investigator to go to Kentucky and find the man in the photo. The investigator took their money and was never heard from again. Was this Louis? Was he trying to tell his parents that he was alive but couldn't come home? George Sodder died in 1969, still looking for his children. Jenny followed him 20 years later. The billboard stayed up until the day she died. Today, the house is gone. The billboard is gone. But the question remains, did 5 children perish in 45 minutes without leaving a single trace? Or were they taken into the night to live a life they were never meant to have? Some secrets stay buried in the ashes forever. I'm the curator of the Cold Ledger. If you want to dive deeper into cases the world tried to forget, subscribe. Let me know your theory in the comments. Did they escape? See you in the next investigation.